Second Level of Learning, Paper 2, Creation of Universes, by Penre Publications, Friday, June 15, 2012. The Great Architect of the Universe and the Purpose of Different Creator Gods. By now, the reader understands a little bit in what direction this is going. The Great Architect of the Universe, which Freemasonry equals to God, is not a masculine entity, but a feminine. Of course, the heads of secret societies like Freemasonry and others know very well that this is the case, but hide it from the members, because they need to have people conform to the patriarchal regime, the fathership rather than the mothership of the energies of existence. Exactly why certain beings from other star systems and higher dimensions are so determined to make us believe in a masculine existence will be evident enough as we go on. But we've been living in a dichotomy for hundreds of thousands of years. Incredibly enough, there are forces who want to overthrow the goddess from the throne of creation. This may sound very strange to some readers, but in time I will show how this can be, and is, possible and planned as we speak and has been the goal of a certain star race for a long, long time, perhaps 1,000,000 years or more. This also indicates that the goddess, the great architect of the universe, can manifest as a being in a universe of her creation. She can and she does. More about that later. Once beings in star races have evolved past a certain point, they may become overseers of their own universe and will be responsible for what is created therein. They become what I call builders, where they start creating in a universe which the goddess has already given energies to and built the basic structure around. In the beginning, the builders and the goddess apparently create and seed life together with each other, but at one point, the builders take over. Then, once the builders are appointed to lead the development of their own universe, the goddess pretty much leaves it alone for the builders to do their own thing, because the more variety, the more the mother goddess can learn about herself. However, it allegedly happens every now and then that she manifests in the universe as she structured and still helps with the seeding part, because each universe has their own builders. Each universe is unique, based on goals set by the mother goddess and the builders. Only the imagination of the builders then sets the limit to what they themselves, the founders and other creator gods can create. The founders are the ones who initially seed plant, insect, and animal life on a young, non-inhabited planet, and eventually also more intelligent life, fit for interdimensional travel. Here below I will list the variety of creator gods and their purposes as I see it, albeit the cataloging is my own for the purpose of these papers. Other researcher may catalog them differently, still meaning the same thing. We also need to keep in mind that evolving in the way described below is a choice. A being or a star race may stop anywhere in their evolvement and not go any further if they so choose. They can instead expand on the level which they are at and not evolve to the next levels explained here. So, it's all by choice and is not being enforced on anybody. However, most star races evolve in this order. So, these 10 steps of development should be pretty accurate. 1. Players, star races who have not yet evolved enough to become multidimensional or creator gods. You and I would be considered players, although there are scientists of the human race who would be considered genetic engineers, or semi-engineers, perhaps. 2. Genetic engineers, or creator gods, with small letters, if evolved enough within this category, a being, or a species, who have evolved on a planet to a degree that they are starting to experiment with genetic engineering, cloning, and genetic manipulation. At this stage, the species may still not have evolved enough to reach the stars or become multidimensional. This is an experimental stage. Humankind, or more accurately, our scientists, is in this stage of development, where they are playing around with genetics. 3. The founders, creator gods with capital letters, also called Kurdistu, are two names for the same beings, but I will mostly call the founders. The founders Kadistu were initially, in the beginning of the universe, beings created by the builders to help them seed the universe with basic life forms, such as plant and animal life. They always leave their signature in what they create. A butterfly may have a physical outlook similar to the founder who created it, and a praying mantis may be a small version of the founder who created this particular insect. Now, when the universe we live in is older, the original founders have evolved further and new founders are assigned constantly by the goddess and the builders. As intelligent beings created by Kadistu have evolved to a point where they can become founders, in order to assist towards the common goal set by the goddess and the original builders. The Kadistu founders are also the ones who choose which species is going to evolve on a certain planet to such a level that they can reach the stars and become multidimensional in nature and learn and understand the multiverse they live in, so that they themselves can become creator gods, and eventually founders and builders. Their urge to reach the stars will be embedded in the DNA of this young species. This is why animals don't have this urge, they were never designed to. Sometimes, there is more than one species on the same planet, designed to become multi-D and evolve to higher levels. 4. Stars. Becoming a star is the next level of evolvement. A star is a sentient, very evolved being, or more often a composite of beings, who create their own solar system by giving birth to planets and moons, who become their children, whom they will be responsible for. Stars are also like portals, because they are directly connected with each other, some more directly than others, and they are in communication with each other and often evolve together as they interact. Creator gods on this level and above are always feminine in nature. A being automatically turns feminine in this stage of development. This is why we call the sun and the earth she, without really knowing why. It just feels natural. In fact, it is a heritage from ancient times, when the early, higher evolved humans knew these secrets and called beings by their appropriate gender. 5. Planets. One would think that a planet is lower on the scale of evolvement than stars, but in reality they evolve together with their star, or stars, if it is a multiple star system, in unison. Planets are intelligent beings, just like the stars, suns, and are hosts to different life forms, seeded through Panspermia by the founders. The life forms developing on a certain planet become the children of that planet, and the life forms and the planet herself are hopefully working together to evolve to a higher level, as they are closely connected to each other. This is why it's so important for us humans to stay grounded in nature to be able to evolve. 6. Nebulae. A nebula is a cosmic cloud, and the birth center of stars. So when a star has accomplished its goals, she evolves into a nebula, not necessarily at the same location as she had lived her incarnation as a star, however, and gives birth to new stars of which she becomes responsible. These stars will be like sisters to each other and will be inhabited by founders and Kadistu who have evolved to a stage where they are ready to become a newborn star in that cluster, created by the nebula. 7. Galaxies. The next step would be to inhabit a whole newly formed galaxy with your consciousness. You are now responsible for the evolvement of that same galaxy, with all the nebulae, stars, planets, founders, Kadistu, creator gods, and players. 8. The builders are evolved beings who are ready to operate in a universe which the goddess may have recently created. The builders are responsible to create initial life and assign their own creator gods, who can help them see the newborn universe and help it work on accomplishing the goals that are set up for this particular universe and which is embedded in the DNA of all races. If the goals are not met, which sometimes happens, because beings have free will in many universes, the universe fails and may die prematurely. This is just a part of the game, and a new, revised and improved attempt will be made through the creation of a new universe, or the goal will be considered not achievable and abandoned. LPGC, in their new report, Idiomaterial Physics, A life physics of a bicausal universe unum, bring up the subject of previous universes as well. There was a Big Bang around 13.7 billion years ago where the universe began from one single point and has been expanding ever since. They then point out that the standard model of science does not explain what happened before that. However, the authors say, there are traces of a previous universe existing in the current universe. This has been suggested by researchers from Penn State University. They say, they have come to the conclusion that there was a previous, contracting universe before this one, with a similar space-time geometry as our expanding universe. The previous universe collapsed and then bounced as the Big Bang. These researchers could show that in place of a classical Big Bang there is in fact a quantum bounce. They claim that the Big Bang bounce scenario is robust. LPGC comments that it's quite similar to rebooting a computer set to specific performance parameter already containing an operating system set to interact and interface with its subsystems and subtotalities, both nocive, using ons and present. Day physical evidence suggests it has not happened just once, but several times. 9. Overseers, beings who have evolved to such high a level that they are assigned their own universe, or a pond of universes, to oversee and be responsible for, will be further explained later in this paper. They now, together with overseers of other universes, who may step down from their positions, become the builders, whom by the goddess are told, go out and create, and the builders, to some extent in conjunction with the goddess, seed the first life in the young universe. The builders become her senior helpers. 10. Mother Goddess. All that is, the creator of all universes, the void or the KHAA. So, universes are created, with galaxies, nebulae, stars, and planets. All this is intelligent energy which is aware on a very high level, much more so than you and I in our current stage of evolvement. When souls advance to certain levels they become planets, stars, nebulae, and galaxies. For example, when you're a star sun and have created your own solar system, other creator gods, such as the founders, arrive and ask for permission to create on your planets, and thus life is expanding. To understand this vast concept of how a being can create a whole universe, we have to use allegories and metaphors. The best way to explain it is with the expression, as above, so below. If something happens in our world, we can be almost certain it also happens on a grander scale, and on a smaller scale too. You can picture a film producer sitting in a couch, watching a movie he created on the big screen. There are characters in the movie who are doing all sorts of things and he watches how the actors perform. Now, picture the goddess sitting in the middle of the universe, which she herself created, watching how we, and everybody else in this universe perform, but perhaps not in 3D but from all dimensions. Just like the film producer, the goddess watches carefully to see what goes per the plan and what goes wrong. She is not judgmental. It's not like she is just destroying her creation left and right if she doesn't like what she sees. It's more like she wants the players to correct themselves, still within the guidelines of free will. She is a very compassionate being and doesn't like suffering, but knows that it's always up to the builders, all the way down to the player, to decide in which directions they want to go, or the purpose of creation gets lost. If free will is not allowed, the outcome is predictable, and this is of course very clear to the goddess. Predictability is not what she wants, because that would destroy the purpose with the whole creation and there would be nothing of much value to learn for her or anybody else, except that everything is predictable. More or less predestined universes, I'm assuming, have existed. What about the outcome? There is always a goal coming with the creation of a universe, and the goddess comes up with the idea of a goal, discusses it with the overseer and the builders, whom she then assigns to help her form a universe as we know it, and these builders make the universe teem with life in all shapes and forms. All these created intelligences then set the stage and start to create their own realities. So there are endless probabilities for the outcome of a universe. It mostly depends on the helpers and the players, the actors in the game, such as you and I. As humans, our curiosity leads us to ask questions that may be irrelevant on a grander scale, but feel important for us. One of these questions may be, how do these builders who create universes look like? Are they just pure energy? This is a very difficult question to answer, because with our limited five senses, it's hard to grasp these big concepts. We know there are microcosms and macrocosms, and the saying, as above, so below is a very appropriate way to describe it. A virus or a bacteria can't even start imagining how a human would look like with their limited consciousness, because in comparison with them, if they would have consciousness to be self-aware, they may see themselves as living in a macrocosm and we would be some super macrocosm to them. Seen from that perspective, the goddess and the overseers of universes would be as super macrocosms to us, but at the same time they would be the microcosm. They would most certainly be both. They are composite fires on a microcosmic level, but can show themselves off on a macrocosmic level as giants too, if they like. A hint of what we're talking about may be found in Barbara Marciniak's book, Family of Light. The builders of universes are not vague, nebulous beings, they are composite intelligences, unified in their understanding of the universal energies. As we shall see when we get into a later section of this paper, a soul on a higher level than 3D, who has learned how to do it, can take on any shape and form at once. So in a way, how an ET looks like becomes on some level nebulous, but it seems like founders who seed planets with life look at themselves in some kind of physical manner. The Pleiadians, themselves a composite intelligence, tell us that many of the original founders who visited Earth when she was in her infancy looked like a combination of humans and animals, like I hinted at above. They all put their imprints on the fauna on Earth. Each creator god has their animal represented as their imprint. Also, people look like animals and thus have different amount of DNA from different creator gods and took on their image. We are created in the images of the gods. These animals keep in touch with their creator gods to see what's going on here on Earth while they are elsewhere. This is particularly interesting in the perspective of what I presented in Level 1 and in the myth of Supreme David Rockefeller, where I said I had noticed in people that they sometimes look like a humanized form of particular animals. This is in no way to ridicule people, because it can be very aesthetic and attractive. Some people have the imprint of looking like birds, other like horses, buffaloes, hippos, bears, wolves, dogs, cats, etc. Other people just look human, with no visible animal imprint. So, when you mingle in a crowd next time, or even when you go to work, just stand back and observe and you will eventually see what I mean. You may even want to look yourself in the mirror and see if you have an imprint yourself. If you do, congratulations. There is a hint how your founder may have looked like. And now I'm talking about our DNA imprints from many millions of years ago, not the imprint of the Syrian lords, who came to Earth later, hijacked the planet and started messing with our DNA. The Pleiadians further tell us that the gods were even putting out chronometers here on Earth, and presumably on other planets too, to measure the stage of consciousness and how it changes. A new way of looking at the structure of the universe from an interdimensional perspective. Science is giving us a model of the universe, and rogue scientists are giving us a slightly different one. I think they are both correct in their own sense, but not complete. Lately, I have looked into this subject to perhaps get a better perspective of it, because I have come to understand that we live in a holographic version of a holographic universe, in other words, a hologram within a hologram, and there may be many more levels of holograms as well. If so, the universe we depict when we look up in the night sky or study star maps, how correct are they? Are they just a hologram and a distorted picture of the known universe, as LPGC calls it? I think it is, to a large degree, so I studied other ways of looking at the universe, the multiverse, and the omniverse, which includes all currently existing universes and the goddess universe as well. Here follows an analogy of how many star beings apparently look upon the universe from a multidimensional perspective, and it also includes a look at things from an omnidimensional viewpoint. I have been comparing notes from many different sources here, but I come back to the following model, which makes sense to me if presented in such a simple fashion that it becomes comprehensible for the human nervous system. Imagine the goddess dropping a pebble into the pond and it creates ripples. Each ripple is a line, or a thread, very much like a sound wave. The universe is built from sound, music. Then think of galaxies as water lilies with lotuses spreading out all over the pond. Then think of these ripples becoming webs, almost like spider webs, and the goddess is the spider in the middle, spinning the webs. These webs eventually become round, like planets, and each ripple, web is equivalent to a universe, and each living universe has an overseer. The Pleiadians are one of the sources who described the universe as a web in an energy exercise from one of Barbara Marciniak's books, Earth, Pleiadian Keys to the Living Library. Imagine a fine spider-like web that makes up your cosmos. As you pull energy through that web, it begins to buzz and sing and inform all parts of itself. Barbara Handclau's Pleiadians are on the same page and go on to further explain. The original pathways out of the vortexes were spun out by Spider Grandmother in the beginning of time and then woven together. The vortexes were generated exactly where the pathways cross, and out of these crossings in lines, species were created. The storytellers told the stories of Spider Grandmother, and animals and plants were formed. We Pleiadians call this the web of life. Now the web has become the net that blocks travel by stellar intelligences in the pathways. The web has tightened and has almost closed due to the lies the Anunnaki layered over the original stories, especially since 0 Point. This last part may seem cryptic to the reader at this point, but we will come back to that, and we are going to find that the Pleiadians here are very accurate. Handclau's Pleiadians continue. As the Anunnaki suck you to get Gaia's energy and plot to keep you under their thumbs, they twist the records of activations by great beings, thus keeping you away from Earth vortexes as much as possible. They are heavily invested in keeping you from discovering the real connective powers of sacred places as well as the active powers of gold, uranium, crystals, and plants. Such powers can activate the Earth and awaken your deep memories, triggering connections with galactic intelligence. Power places have often been revealed to you by the unexpected appearance of illuminated beings. Often temples are built where great beings were seen, and many of you can genuinely feel this energy of place. The Anunnaki believe they own you. They've diverted you away from these power places, preventing the great beings from reaching you. Lately, even they are bored with their own limited games, and they are impulsed to seek these great beings. The dynamic is shifting fast because they know these power vortexes are their only access to these powers. Now, to expand on the pond allegory, we said that in a pond there are webs which are becoming round, like planets, and every round web becomes a universe. Each pond consists of 12 universes. Then, there are other ponds, almost infinite in numbers, which are all consisting of 12 universes each. The goddess has placed a part of herself in the middle of each universe in any given pond. Before life can develop on any planet, it has to come from somewhere. We know from our history books and geology lessons that there was a lot of thunder and lightning in the beginning of Earth's history and eventually our atmosphere was formed. The rain started and they didn't stop until eons later and filled our world with water which became the oceans. In our term, abnormal weather conditions continued on the planet for a very long time. Also, asteroids kept bombarding the planet from north to south, from east to west, and vice versa. These asteroids, meteors, and meteoroids came of course from outer space and landed on our world, and they still do, albeit not in the quantity they used to. However, this is very important to keep in mind, as we shall see now. First of all, lightning contains a high level of energy, life energy. Scientists of today understand that this may have something to do with creating life, which is very true. Nowadays, they are also starting to grasp the idea of panspermia, which means that life on Earth may have started elsewhere, namely in outer space. One of the many versions of panspermia is called directed panspermia. This means that someone from outer space seeded asteroids with life and literally directed these space rocks intentionally to hit our planet so that life could start developing. In my mind, based on my own research, there is no doubt whatsoever that directed panspermia is a reality, and the life-bringing viruses and bacteria were directed mainly by the so-called founders. These asteroids, meteors, and meteoroids also carried the DNA, the basic building blocks, when they fell into the oceans and on land. Thus, primitive life forms started developing. More heavenly bodies were directed our way as time went by, and more developed life forms began to show up on Earth. The theory that life started in the oceans and fish evolved to a stage where they grew legs and became land beings is not necessarily correct. More likely, rocks from space which hit land contained DNA which would, when hit the ground, start developing plants and land animals on land as well as it had done, eons earlier, in the oceans. This is how life started on Earth, and this is how life starts on any planet in the universe. It doesn't start by itself in a random fashion, it is being seeded by extraterrestrial, highly evolved beings. And now think about this. Meteors and other rocks from space are still landing on our planet. Are they carrying DNA which will develop into totally new species that will start showing up in the future? If we look back in time, new types of plants and new species of animals have developed on our planet in the past and still are. It's an interesting thought. When a new intelligent race is created, many founders contribute to its creation. Then this race evolves until it reaches a state of creator godship, after have learned as much as it possibly can about themselves and the universe they live in. While doing this, each individual contributes to the overall expansion of consciousness in that universe and other universes, too, as they are all connected in the web, and ultimately, the goddess is learning more about herself. Normally, a species evolves together and is reaching the state of creator godship as a group, in unison, although there are exceptions from the rule. Planet Earth is one of these exceptions, as we shall see later on. Here on Earth we are trapped in a veil of amnesia, so it's extremely hard to evolve on a planet such as ours. But even here on Earth, although it's done more on an individual basis at the moment, each individual who evolves and raises his or her consciousness affects others to do the same, and it still becomes a group thing and eventually affects the whole human soul group in one way or the other. We will discuss our specific condition as a human soul group in later papers, but for now we only need to know that our conditions are not a natural process in the development of a species. After have passed a stage in their development when they have become multidimensional, are able to space travel, and understand the science of genetic engineering, a species normally becomes life designers or founders, which means they go out in the universe and seed new life on young planets. They become genetic engineers who can create life by using DNA of their own life form and, if they like, mix it with other races, to create something new to develop on the new world. But first, if they are ethical and follow the laws of non-interference, they ask for permission from the Creator God who has already become the star sun of that solar system in which the founders and the Kadis do want to create. The star, as a Creator God, first created the planets of its own solar system. These planets are meant to be seeded with life by younger Creator gods who have still not evolved to become stars. The raw collective in the raw material tell us that you become a sun, star when you reach what they term the eighth density. After have become stars and planets, we normally do so as a species, or a collective of founders who have evolved, as described in the raw material. By being stars, we are now the overhead owners of the real estate we call a solar system, where a planet is the living host of the species dwelling on it. The star, as the mother of its solar system, is a nurturer of all life which is evolving in her system, just like a human mother would nurture her children. A planet is doing the same thing with the life she hosts so that it can develop under the best imaginable conditions available to her. This is an example of unconditional love, because no matter what the life that's evolving in the solar system is doing, Mother Sun and Mother Earth continue sending them both light and unconditional love. None of them is judgmental. Then it is up to the species themselves to take advantage of this incredible nurturing. This can be compared to human children when they grow up, hopefully giving back to their parents what the parents gave them, and are passing the best of it on to their children. In this manner, a species will give back to the host what they are using of her resources so balance can be maintained. If a species can learn this, they will be good creator gods in the future, because they know how to nurture and love. Hence, their own creations when they become founders will receive the love and light they need to evolve peacefully. It's often when imbalanced founders go out and create that their children, their creations, become imbalanced as well. We know how this goes from watching our own human parenting. It's nothing different on a higher level of consciousness. We can be aware and conscious on a level high enough to become creator gods, but if we are not addressing our own imbalances before that, we will not be good creator gods, parents. Normally, the founders who seed the planet will usually be called the overseers of their creations, as they are helping the newborn species with their baby steps towards adolescence and adulthood, when needed. They follow their development on a distance without their creation being aware of it, or they sometimes give their creation the tools they need to evolve, and then leave them on their own, only checking back on occasion. Here on Earth, in ancient times, and still today within native tribes and other evolved people, we could see the tribes thanking the Earth and the Sun for what they were receiving from them. They had a much better understanding of whom they were in relation to the planet they lived on and the heavenly bodies. If there is too much imbalance, like on Earth, currently, it affects the planet, the Sun, the whole solar system, and in the worst case scenario, other parts of the universe. Planets and stars, as we now understand, are sentient beings, and they are affected by imbalance, just like you and I, and react to it by becoming sick and do abnormal things. We see that a lot in our own solar system today. Planets, no different from ourselves, are electromagnetic beings, and they influence us. The Sun is doing everything she can to help us evolve, and although we need to do the work ourselves, the Sun, which can be seen as a common oversoul for our species, helps us by feeding us encoded light within the electromagnetic spectra, especially powerful in the gamma spectrum and above. Yes, there is an above. Examples of this are the solar flares and the 11-year sunspot cycles. They both carry packages of information which trigger parts of our DNA that is dormant, and we start seeing things from a different, slightly more evolved perspective, although each individual on the planet decodes this light, encoded information differently, which is the whole purpose. After all, we are created as individuals. So, it's not the Sun going crazy, erupting and sending out flares that may be harmful for us. It's quite the opposite. It's necessary for the evolution of a species and something all suns do to help life evolve on their planets. The Pleiadians say there is intelligent life on all planets in our solar system, in one form or the other. This doesn't mean that we can take a space shuttle and go to Jupiter and find little green men there, but if the Pleiadians are correct, life in other dimensions exist on these planets. This is why it's so ludicrous when SETI and others are sending out radio signals into space, hoping to find life. Life is all around us and has been for millions of years, perhaps billions. Beings who would potentially pick up these radio signals would totally ignore them. They already know about Earth, and if they wanted to reply, they would already have done so. Even if there is life on all planets in our solar system, does this mean there is life on all planets in the universe? My research has led me to believe that the answer is no. Our system is still relatively young, so it's teeming with life. But there are older systems out there where planets have fulfilled their duty of hosting a species, and the species have left. In these cases, the goddess and the builders let these planets have a resting period before they are potentially allowing them to be seeded again. Interestingly enough, the Pleiadians tell us that civilizations in themselves are seeded, and after a specific civilization either fails or moves on, there is a lag before the next installment. Pretty much like there is a lag between sequels when you were making a movie with a part 1, 2, and 3. They suggest that on our planet, civilizations are layered one on top of the other, and they are all connected. Then they say something very interesting. In the time of the awakening, which is now, the old cultures, who are no longer living on Earth, and whom we have no contact with in present time, will come alive again and operate simultaneously, together with us, because their blueprints will be recalled and magnetized into this opening multidimensional plane. This has to do with timeline merging, something I explained in Level 1. If everything goes well, the star and its solar system live its cycle, turns into a supernova, then a white dwarf and eventually a black hole. In that process, the star as a collective of creator gods is normally ready to become a nebula which creates its own hosts, clusters of stars to be inhabited by consciousness. The consciousness which inhabits the shell, which is the visible star itself, is of course that of founder collectives who are prepared to evolve to their next phase of development, to become a star. These stars, inhabited by Kadistu founder consciousness, are the children of the nebula. Normally, when the stars in the star cluster, which the nebula created, have accomplished their goals, or are well into the process, the nebula evolves into a galactic consciousness, where all nebulae, stars, planets, creator gods, players, animals and plants will be her children. The centers of the galaxies, if the reader recalls, are the wombs of the mother, where the goddess leaves her imprints in each universe that contains galaxies. The creator god, who evolved from a nebula to a galaxy, will surround the galaxy, just like a soul information cloud. Fire is thought of as surrounding our body. However, in the middle of each galaxy there is a giant black hole, signified as the womb of the mother goddess, where her presence is flooding into the galaxy and fires every corner of it, and every single cell in it. The nebula who is evolving is more of an overseer of the progress of the entire galaxy. When a galaxy has reached its goals, it will slowly integrate with the goddess universe, the 96%, again. Although the fire of the goddess can never die or stop burning from a 4% universe perspective, this is still what it looks like it's doing. However, what is actually happening is that instead of suns and a whole galaxy burning out and its light fading, it evolves into becoming dark matter and dark energy. In other words, it becomes pure spirit and everything therein merges with the goddess. It would be logical to think that the creator god who was overseeing this particular galaxy now may turn into a dark cosmic cloud and then create clusters of galaxies which he oversees. However, this is most unlikely, because my research has made me conclude that the galaxies are created by the mother goddess herself, so her imprint can be found in everything there is in each universe as well as in each galaxy and all the way down to the smallest of particles. So the clusters of galaxies scientists have seen being formed are solely the creation of Goddess herself, in a distant past. It is my understanding that no more galaxies are created at this time, because of the imbalance in our universe as a whole. Not until the great misuse of energy is resolved will new galaxies be created. The ones the scientists have discovered were created billions and billions of years ago, as they are looking back in time when they explore phenomena at a far distance. The more light years away, the further back in time they look. It's much more likely that the being who oversaw a galaxy and now is ready to evolve is assigned its own ripple or web, which corresponds to an entire universe. This former galactic consciousness, now transformed into something else, will be the overseer of its own universe, while the goddess is the overseer of them all. As we can see from our discussion so far, there is no such thing as Darwinism and an evolution of species through natural selection and random creation. Everything on a planet is seeded by creator gods outside of the planet, by what we here would call highly developed extraterrestrials. Each species then evolves in its own pace over time. And we also see that there is a god, or in fact a goddess, who oversees all creation. The founders, life designers of the multiverse. The Pleiadians call them the game masters. Other names for them are the life designers, the founders, the Kadistu, the original planners, and many, many more. As we already discussed, I have chosen, and stuck to, certain terms for certain types of creator gods to make it less confusing. In Sumerian language, and if we trace it back even further, Aryan language, they are called the Kadistu, a word we decomposed in the previous paper, and which is used frequently in Anton Park's trilogy, The Chronicles of the Girka. I will mostly call them founders, however, because this is a word more commonly used in these modern times. I am aware of that some call them the Elohim as well, equivalent to Sichans and Icke, or Syrians, which is who they really are, and Elohim is the term designated to them in the Bible as well. However, I want to make sure the reader understands that the Elohim are only one race of founders, and not exchangeable with the term founder or Kadistu itself. Therefore, I am very reluctant to using the term Elohim. The Pleiadians, in Marcignac's book, Earth, Pleiadian Keys to the Living Library are in accordance with LPGC when speaking about ontoenergetics, that the founders are formless, soul-like, but can overlay and infuse themselves in many shapes and forms, and they are boundless shape-shifters, moving beyond sound and geometry. As we shall see later on, shape-shifting is as common in the multiverse as eating is for us, not a big deal. We humans can do it easily when we understand how to. The founders first create in their minds the entire blueprint for the entire evolution of a targeted planet, and then seeding starts by directing meteors and other heavenly bodies containing seeds of life in form of bacteria and viruses, etc. towards the planet, and the desired evolution will begin, all in simple terms. Then, let's say they are creating one or more intelligent life forms on that particular planet, and cultures and civilizations arise and fall. They then can, if they so wish, open up portals to literally insert cultures into the planes of the targeted planet. But not only that, when a blueprint of a civilization or culture is made, founders can manifest variations of this blueprint in different realities. In the book, the Pleiadians make up an analogy with capes. It's like when someone makes a blueprint of a cape, it is then manifested in reality in that particular shape and form. But then the creator of these capes notices that there is a demand of variations of that cape, so he or she creates those variations and manifests them, too. So when the Kadistu creates one culture, variations of that culture's, including variations of its languages, are also inserted and anchored into other realms. The founders seed planets with intelligent life forms for a reason. Each civilization has a certain purpose, which is imprinted in their DNA, a purpose which is often unique for that species. But there is also a bigger, common purpose we, as a created species, have with other races in the multiverse, and that is to grow up, learn about creation, and share our experiences with the cosmos, to make it expand in consciousness and intelligence, and then to become creator gods ourselves, if we so wish. I explained earlier in this chapter that the Kadistu are often the overseers of the cultures they have created and help in their development, or leave them the tools they need to be able to evolve on their own. However, sometimes, like in the case of humanity, that doesn't happen the way it is supposed to. The Pleiadians were not founders in its true meaning, but some of them were their helpers, who eventually messed up and left their mess behind them. The major reason they are here now, channeling through Barbara Marciniak, is because for themselves to be able to grow any further, they must make sure that all forms of life that they have helped create or maintain and set into motion have as much freedom as they themselves wish to have. They know, and express it well in their book, that the goddess will not take them in before they have done this. So the golden rule, do unto others, very much applies to all beings in the multiverse, as it seems. This also applies very much to humanity as well. It's easy to point fingers at aliens who did this and others who did that, but the problems we're sitting in right now are our problems in the sense that we are the only ones who can solve them, and it doesn't matter if they were created by us in the first place or not. The manifestation of the Creator in the physical universe. In many religions on earth we learn that God is a being, sometimes seemingly of flesh and blood. In metaphysics we tend to think about God as the all that is, whom embraces everything and everybody around us, ourselves included. But we don't usually think of God as manifest, neither as a being of flesh and blood, nor as a spirit of a kind like that of you and I, but something grander and almost incomprehensible. However, new research I've done suggests that the goddess can actually manifest in the physical. The goddess created the web of the multiverse with grids and holes, metaphorically speaking. The holes are the goddess manifest and corresponds with dark matter and dark energy. Her creation is not yet finished, and she can spin more webs as she sees fit, and let it point at creator gods come in and create. Anonymous sources are telling me that she is also able to take on a physical form so beings can see her, and she is apparently always manifesting herself in a fashion which is appealing to the beholder, something the observer is familiar with and can refer to. Barbara Hand-Clow is telling us a similar thing. Both Marciniak's Pleiadians and those of Hand-Clow acknowledge the divine feminine. Here is a first quote from a channeled session by Hand-Clow. As you enter Aquarius, the women as daughters of Earth will be the first players on the stage as Pleiadian storytellers. This has already begun. We Pleiadians do not express ourselves via sexual gender, but we are the guardians of the goddess and we have a very feminine vibration. As we speak of woman, we speak of Gaia in each one of you. Your male and female selves are both goddess and god, and as Earth has witnessed an overabundance of male energy, we Pleiadians are here to help all of you awaken the goddess within. During this most recent journey through the galactic night, you became highly self-reflective and your brains are getting very activated. You've developed yourselves magnificently so that you would be ready to challenge forces that control your reality at the cosmic party. We Pleiadians like to refer to these forces as the world management team. And as far as I can ascertain as I read your vibrations, these forces are directed on Earth by the Anunnaki. But can the goddess really manifest in the universe, just like the biblical alleged God did? According to some sources, the answer is yes. And not only can she do so, she does, ever so often, allegedly. So when a Christian, or non-Christian person, prays to God, he or she is praying to the Mother Goddess, and the prayers are heard. The goddess, in her manifestation, is a very compassionate being, and if help is asked for, help is usually coming, in one form or another. People who pray for something specific often expect that specific thing to manifest, and when it doesn't manifest exactly the way the person expects it to, they don't think the prayer is heard. This is often not the case, and I'll make an example. John is praying that he will be better at doing his job, because he feels like his co-workers are better than he is. Believing in prayers, he is hoping his wish will come true. Still, The day after he makes a couple of terrible mistakes at work which will draw attention from his co-workers. He goes home in the evening, very discouraged, and thinks prayers probably don't help. But he tells himself to give it another chance, and he prays again for the same thing. The next day, he is making a few similar mistakes as the day before and is even more discouraged and decides that prayers don't work and stops praying. If John instead would have looked at what kind of mistakes he made these 2 days, he would perhaps have noticed that they were exactly the things he needed to improve on to be able to be as good as his co-workers. If he had taken that into consideration and developed his skills in these particular areas, he would perhaps have had a good chance to succeed. So instead of magically improve at work, the goddess pointed out in which area he needed to do his own work, so the prayer was actually heard. This is often how prayers are manifested. Help is coming, but the person who asks for it still has to do the job. Help is often coming in form of tools, so that the person can learn on their own. Individual souls, whom on their own merit, or groups of beings who have evolved together to create a composite, can on occasion have direct encounters with the goddess. And if ready, the goddess may appoint these individuals to become creator gods as she and they see fit. When the evolution of an intelligent species is not interfered with and manipulated by external forces in any major way, a whole species, or the majority of them, can evolve together and be appointed creator gods by the goddess herself and become a collective consciousness of creator gods. This I see can happen when the members of the species are open to each other and share their experiences so that they all can learn both individually and as a group. If no secrets are held, the species after some time becomes a collective consciousness. Those who don't grasp this concept sometimes call a star race like this a hive community and refer to it as a community with one authority whom the rest of the species follow without questioning. Although I'm sure there are such cultures, this is not what I am referring to here. Then, on occasion, there are individuals, or groups of individuals, who become creator gods without have been appointed by the goddess, and do so by means of technology, and with a purpose of gaining power over others and cheat their way up to godhood rather than doing it to contribute to the greatest good of all involved. Part of humanity is about to do just that. By infiltration and manipulation by off-world forces, mankind has fallen into the shadowlands of reality, and a lot of secrets are held in a hierarchical structure, and it works its way down to separate everyday people, who follow the same examples to lie, cheat and hold secrets from each other. It's a very dangerous path and needs to be broken as any ethical and moral reader can see, or these beings will do harm to the universal creation as a whole, and eventually to themselves as well, more harm than they can imagine at this point in time. But I will blow it up to an extent that I hope people will understand the dilemma we are in and what needs to be done. It can be hard for us to understand this process of being appointed, perhaps by a manifestation of the goddess herself, in physical or in spirit, but our nervous system while still stuck in 3D reality is very limited. And it requires of us to think outside the box a lot to expand our consciousness. Creation is the perfect symphony. As mentioned in the beginning of this paper, music and sound are both a huge part of creation. It is now pretty clear to the reader that I am not a supporter of the Big Bang Theory as it has been portrayed by the majority of mainstream science. Nothing, and I mean nothing at all, in the creation of this universe or others, was random and coincidental. It is a little amusing that so many cosmologists and other scientists still hang on to the Big Bang Theory of randomness, and that life on Earth happened by mistake. These people are supposedly the top brains on this planet, and they count on our stupidity in trusting everything they say, because of course, most of them know better. The reason they still hang on to a sinking ship is because they need their funding. If those who fund them, the powers that be, to keep it simple, want old paradigms still be promoted to the public, and the scientists who want to keep their paychecks and be rewarded for job well done better adjust to what the money masters say. However, lately we've started seeing a change in this. We now hear that they have found Earth-like planets out there in other solar systems which can be life-bearing. But this is old news and they only release what they absolutely need to in order to keep up with the growing increase of consciousness on the planet. They don't want to look like fools, either. Still, they know so much more than they let us know, so much more. As we shall see in the next paper, I am not discarding the idea of a Big Bang itself. Solid evidence shows that this universe was created from a sudden Big Bang, but the difference is that mainstream science are telling us that Big Bang was the beginning of everything, when it was just the beginning of a new cycle in a seemingly endless recycling of universes. It has actually been proven by scientists, but still not accepted in mainstream, starting with a Swiss scientist in the 1960s, Dr. Hans Jenny, that sound and music form matter. It's called somatics. In a video series on YouTube, the reader can clearly see how vibration creates form. First, we see random particles spread out all over, and when sound is played, the particles come together and create amazing geometrical and other patterns. When the sound changes, so do the pattern. The universe is formed and comes together by sound. DNA activation in an individual or group is primarily happening because of sound. This is why the people who run the Wingmakers website, and other groups as well, promote music as DNA activators. A word of warning here. It's up to the individual to sign up for different DNA activation programs or not, but personally I would pass on all of them. This is something that happens naturally and is a part of the development of a species, so always question the intention of those who present such programs before you accept them. Earth resonates at a frequency of 7.8 Hz, and when a human body is able to vibrate at that same rate, there is an incredible psychic opening and increase in awareness. Sounds can even stimulate deterioration or regeneration of organs in the body. Some say that rock music of low vibrations, such as tuned-down guitars played with maximal distortion, still is uplifting to the body and mind, and at least certainly doesn't do any harm. I have heard this from skilled musicians who are also very spiritually aware. When I point out that we can clearly see the effects from those who listen to that kind of music a lot, and it's not uplifting, the spokesman blamed this on the lyrics. Yes, I agree that the lyrics can, and do, work to program your brain, but the low-frequency music does the main job, albeit, often the two work together. I would go as far as to say that not only does it degrade the listener, but can also make them sick, even terminally ill. David Icke, in his book, Human Race Get Off Your Knees, The Lion Sleeps No More talks about the same thing regarding creation and music. In fact, string theory in mainstream science is based on something similar. Particles are indeed invisible vibrating strings. Icke quotes the American theoretical physicist, Bert Everett, as follows. You can think of it as a violin string or a guitar string. If you pluck it in a certain way you get a certain frequency, but if you pluck it a different way you can get more frequencies on this string and in fact you have different notes. Nature is made of all the little notes, the musical notes, that are played on these superstrings. Icke goes on, showing a picture of a complex pattern, and underneath the picture he writes, this pattern has been created, and is held together, by particles reacting to a blueprint communicated through sound. When the sound changes the pattern changes and when the sound stops the particles return to a random state. This is how worlds are created out of the still and silent all possibility. I agree totally with Icke and the point he wants to make. The symphony of a galaxy, for example, is what keeps everything within that galaxy within a certain frequency band, which perhaps corresponds to the purposes and goals of that particular galaxy. Same goes for stars and planets and so on. These things are all sentient beings, and music I think will become a greater and greater part of a being's awareness as they evolve. And not only to have something to listen to, it's embedded in the DNA. Each person has their own song, and although most of we humans can't hear those songs, they are still there and are our signatures. The song changes slightly with our mood, and when we get more evolved, we will hear not only our own songs, but the songs of the universe itself. No worries, though, this doesn't mean each person is going to walk around hearing a billion songs at the time, but we can tune in and tune out just like we do with all the sounds constantly going on around us. Then, when we become founders, stars, galaxies, etc., we are going to set the tune for our own creations, so we'd better have a good song to begin with. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. Not all creator gods have a good song to share. The Pyramid Builders. Sound is extremely powerful. If it's made to create universes, it can of course be tamed and used on smaller scales. All the great pyramids, for example, they stand there as monuments from past civilizations about whom we know next to nothing. It's a mystery, and the creation of these wonders of the world has puzzled mankind for thousands of years. How come we can't even slide a credit card between the cracks of many of these stones that build a pyramid? Many explanations have been suggested, both in mainstream and by alternative thinkers and researchers, one more ridiculous than the other. The theory that the pharaohs were using slave labor to transport these huge stones and put them up where they should go is widespread. This theory falls on its own merit due to that there often is not even a location nearby where these stones could have been transported from, and no less could human slave labor put stones so perfectly together. These civilizations are supposed to be very primitive compared to ours, so did the slaves use hackers and hammers to make them this perfect? It is amazing sometimes what they want people to believe, counting on that humans are extraordinarily stupid, or stupefied. Sadly enough, many people accept such ludicrous theories without thinking twice about them. The pyramids were, in fact, created by the gods with sound technology, which becomes quite obvious when we understand how sound can form and format matter, as explained above. The Pleiadians further tell us that the pyramids in Egypt were used as sound devices to communicate with the heavens. But not only that, they were used for many things, and one of these things were as weights to balance electromagnetic forces and actually to create an acupuncture point of energy into the Earth grid. They further explain that the Great Pyramid does not only exist above the ground. Below the ground the structure pierces the earth so energy from the cosmos can be transmitted and grounded from one age to another. The Great Pyramid in Giza has been around far longer than historians and archaeologists have postulated and has a greater purpose than any of our history books lets us know. The ethereal composite in the trap, death recycling amnesia trap. Have you ever considered the definition of yourself? What is it that defines you? If you look in the mirror and peel away the masks, the pretensions, the deceptions, the fears, the thoughts, the feelings, what remains? For most they would answer their soul or spirit. And if I told you that the soul, as most define it, does not truly exist apart from the mind, what would you say? James of the Wingmakers. Now, how is that possible if we reincarnate over and over again on this planet, and all time is simultaneous and we live all these lives at the same time, from a multidimensional perspective? Don't we in that case have different minds in different lifetimes? Well, not really. Read again what James is saying in the above quote. He says, the soul, as most define it, does not truly exist apart from the mind. My emphasis. And how do most of us define soul? I think LPGC explains it pretty well when they tell us what the soul in fact is. They call the soul the information cloud, which is pretty much what it is. So, let us go a little more in details about what a soul is. Let us also explain the concept of Oversoul. The soul, information cloud is the part of self which gathers information from each lifetime. The information cloud is surrounding, and tightly connected with, and indexed to, the mind and the body on a specific planet. The soul is in its turn composed of a light body, or an avatar, and the mind is connected with an emotional body. All of them, including the soul information cloud, are electrical components. The three components, information cloud, mind, and body, are like one unit working together, as long as the biological body is alive. During that lifetime, The body and the mind are experiencing things in the physical universe, and the information cloud is collecting the experiences. The mind is therefore the personality. Then, when that particular lifetime has come to an end, the information cloud, the mind, a light body, which I will call the avatar from here on, and an emotional body, tightly connected to the mind, separate themselves from the body and are supposed to report back to the Oversoul, which is the bigger part of you, the mega information cloud. If you will, I am saying supposed to for a reason, which will be clearer soon. The information cloud, the avatar, and the emotional body mind, which I will call the ethereal composite, or EC, all in one piece move from the physical body into the astral plane, the between lives area. BLA. This astral plane is a designated time-space where the EC can rest between incarnations, often with full recall of previous lifetimes. In the between lives area, BLA, the EC can think up an environment with friends, relatives, and soul groups, etc., and set goals for the next lifetime, as explained in Level 1. With the between life information based on Dr. Michael Newton's research, and from channeling. Dr. Newton has put more than 7,000 people in regression therapy, where they all are telling him very similar stories of what happens between incarnations. Now, in order to understand what I am going to explain, we have to think of the multiverse as being very fluid. Nothing is set in stone. Everything can be changed, relived, and healed, even events that have already happened. This is what the so-called nanosecond from 1987 to 2012 is all about. When the founders want to create an intelligent species who has the capacity built into their DNA to reach the stars once they are evolved enough, they can either invite non-physical ontoenergetics to descend into a body to run it, or literally create new souls from the ether. These latter souls will be created from the ocean of consciousness all around us, the 96% of spirit, goddess, which is dark matter and dark energy, to operate in the physical universe, and will become separate individuals instead of just part of the ocean. In other words, they will gain separate consciousness and become self-aware here in the 4%. They are so-called newborn souls, and hence they are very naive in the beginning until they learn. We've all been in this newborn stage. I am aware of that many channeled sources have a different view on this, saying that all souls are equally old, that is as old as the physical universe. This is, from what I have come to understand, not correct. From a multidimensional standpoint, the soul is ageless, because all time is simultaneous, and in addition, the soul originates from outside of time as we know it. It originates in the goddess universe. When an individual soul is born to explore the physical universe and its dimensions, in order to have individual experiences here in the 4%, at that point became individually aware. This soul can then split up in different factions to explore many realities at once, as explained in Level 1. Then, as these soul fragments, all of the same soul entity, are experiencing things, they are creating a storage for their own experiences, which becomes the Oversoul. The more experiences a soul has, lifetime after lifetime here in the 4%, the bigger the Oversoul grows, restoring all the wisdom of the different soul fragments. This Oversoul exists outside of time as we know it, dwelling in the 96%, and is thus also reporting back to the goddess, who is learning about herself from the fragments of souls operating in the 4%. The purpose of our whole existence is to experience and learn so that the goddess can learn more about herself by letting fragments of herself operate randomly without any set outcome. Normally, as explained by Dr. Michael Newton in his excellent books, these newborn souls will train on special test worlds which are not real, but computer-generated holograms for the young souls to practice in before they are let loose in the real 4% universe. It's an interesting concept, which gives a hint of the hologramic nature of the matrix. Next, the founders are attaching the soul information cloud together with its avatar and emotional body onto a biological body. The founders are also attaching information clouds in certain ways to animals, plants, and rocks, and put their imprints on them. The newborn EC now has its own biokind to use in 3D to explore the new world and evolve under the laws of free will and non-interference, hopefully. The goals for the species are already programmed into the DNA, but can be changed by the individuals and the species as a whole as they evolve. If they choose a different path, anything is possible. With time, a species will learn how to use their multidimensional abilities and will reach out to the stars, and eventually they may not need to stay on their planet anymore and simply move on. The planet gets a resting period and may then become host for a new experiment by the same or other founders. So, the above is what is supposed to happen, and we can see that the soul and the mind go together, just like James said in the beginning of this section. However, this is not what is happening on Earth. It all started out with the best of intentions, and in fact, the early humans were created as a very special species with very special and honorable goals, and the fires were already inserted into these highly multidimensional androgynous bodies. However, once upon a time, humankind was, as explained in the previous paper, hijacked by an alien race, which Sitchin called the Anunnaki, basically originating from the Sirius star system. What this invader force did in a nutshell on a metaphysical level was that when a body died and the EC went to the BLA, an invader force was waiting there. Ever heard of the tunnel of light? The individual was still allowed to create new goals after they had reviewed their previous lifetime, and perhaps a few before that, and could enjoy moments of peace and joy. However, these goals were checked against a council to see if they were innocent enough to be approved. If so, the person got a go-ahead. If not, false goals were implanted into the being on top of the real goal by using fast-moving pictures on a screen while the victim was glued to a metaphysical chair. These fast-moving pictures went right into the subconscious mind and were there processed in high speed as if they were the person's real goals. They were repeated until the soul believed this was their real goal. Let's say the person had as his goal to become a foreman in the gold mines. This was a goal the Syrians loved and highly supported if there was a vacant foreman spot anticipated. But if the person's goal was to escape from the mines, of course they changed his goal before he reincarnated. Then, when the EC was shot down into a body, they were forced into a veil of amnesia, which made them forget all their previous lives while down on the planet. The veil of amnesia was programmed into the human body's DNA, so as soon as the spirit entered the body, they started forgetting who they were and what they were doing there, and a state of confusion hit the recently entered EC. And the EC was getting constantly recycled, reincarnated, instead of living their lives fully at all times, with total recall. I write this in past tense, but it's still going on today. However, there seems to be more freedom now regarding what goals we can choose and what not. Much more on this later. By doing this, the Syrians and their cohorts had full control over us, because we no longer knew who we were and where we came from. We started thinking that being slaves to this invader force was a normal condition for us. And this is how it still is today. Only difference is that we are waking up and start remembering. This, to a large degree, has to do with solar flares, sunspots, and gamma rays, which bombard the Earth from both our own sun, the central sun, Alcyone, and the galactic center, which we now are aligning with. Gamma rays carry tons of information and trigger our DNA and help us decode encoded strands, which we call junk DNA, but is none of the sort. There is a very special reason, beyond any other reasons, why the Pleiadians want us to stay grounded in our bodies while we are reaching out to the stars. The bodies are being decoded by the electrical impulses from the electrical sun and the galactic center. This means that our junk DNA is now being reactivated, and we can once again become what we were before the invaders came. So hold out, things will get better for us. The problem we have now with the personality issue after we've been enslaved is that we forget who we are when we move into the next incarnation. This means that our personality changes and can change drastically when we compare different lives. We can be the sweetest person in one life, but when we are born into another genetic bloodline next time, we are pretty much subjected to the memories embedded in the DNA of that bloodline, plus what our parents teach us, plus our experiences while we grow up. This doesn't mean we lose our basic personality that is the real us. But it does mean that we can be each other's opposite from lifetime to lifetime until many of us one day soon will wake up totally to whom we are on a soul level and can regain our basic, loving personality. Most people, throughout time, don't even know that they live again and again, but now we start realizing that we do. Due to the veil of amnesia, we can no longer easily access our previous lives, and we have to relearn everything we already know on a soul level every single lifetime, and this is the whole purpose. Because then the powers that be can reprogram us via their educational system to teach us only enough to become the perfect slaves, and how to pay our taxes, how to make the rich richer, and how to remain poor but still think we are free. It's the perfect trap, almost. If it wasn't for the fact that we are waking up from our sleep state more rapidly now than ever before. The question is, are we waking up fast enough? I told you to keep in mind that the multiverse is fluid. Now I will explain why that is so important to understand. First of all time is simultaneous, so on a higher, multidimensional level, all our lifetimes happen at once, and we leave our imprints in each and every lifetime we have lived. Therefore, both those who say we live all lifetimes simultaneously, and those who say we simply reincarnate as the same soul over and over, are both correct, in a way. Let me explain. Even if you lived a lifetime in the 1500s, which obviously is in the past from our point of view, it is still possible, because of the fluid multiverse, to access that lifetime in your mind and change the events and outcome of it. This is possible because you left your imprint there and that lifetime is not gone, it still exists in the fluid multiverse. We are now almost at the end of a great year, one great year being roughly 26,000 years, one orbit around the zodiac, and time is speeding up. This is normal and always happens at the end of a cycle, and those who are born to live through these times, being able to have a body here in this particular time period must consider themselves very lucky, even if the challenges are great. The reason being that when a great year comes full circle, each being has the great opportunity to heal themselves along the lines of time. By taking on the challenges we are facing now, on a soul level, more and more so every day, and do what we can to resolve them, we are healing old lifetimes at the same time. The problems we are facing right now, both on an individual basis and as a collective, are what we normally call karma. What blows up in our face are unresolved problems and issues from many previous lifetimes we've had on this planet. If we handle accordingly, we will heal and evolve exponentially, because we no longer have unresolved issues from the past attached to us, which will draw our energy and attention from the very present, which is the only thing that really exists. Everything is one big present. When we heal issues in our present during this time period, we also heal both our past lives and our future ones. Past and future are just illusions. When we start healing ourselves, whether it is emotionally or physically, we also begin to feel more and more love and understanding for the present moment and everything therein. We become more spirit or fire and stronger and more powerful than most beings in the multiverse. Why? Because of what we have gone through down here. Once we've handled our issues and regained our normal multidimensional abilities and remember who we are, very little can bring us down again, and the men of power will have no effect on us. We will go into this in more details in the last papers of Level 2. By healing ourselves along the lines of time, do I mean that we have to address each and every lifetime in order to heal? No, the issues we are facing during this current lifetime, roughly between now and 2012, are the ones we need to address in order to fully heal on a soul level. Unresolved issues are a chain of events. Let's say you have a recurring problem in your love relationship. You can then be quite certain you have had this problem in many previous lives. But when fully coming to terms with the problem in present time, you break the chain, and the same problem will be resolved in your previous lives. There are multiple timelines in existence, and hence, there are many parallel universes where you exist in as well, in a slightly different version of reality based on different outcomes. For example, there are timelines where Hitler won the war and where 9/11 never happened. This is irrelevant to your healing process. You only heal the timeline you are in every single moment in life because that's where the healing needs to take place. The fire and the avatar. So let's back up a little bit so we can explain a little deeper what a soul is and what it is composed of. Robert Morning Sky talks about souls being small pieces of fires who inhabit our bodies. They are tiny nanoparticles, which correspond to the subquantum level of the universe. These tiny fires are borrowed by the founders directly from the goddess, spirit, the 96% or the universe, lent her energy from the ocean of consciousness to the founders to use when creating new fires. Therefore, the fire is feminine in nature. You can even see this when a baby is created in a woman's womb. The baby is always a girl to begin with, and the gender may stay the same throughout the pregnancy and the baby becomes a female, or the gender changes before the baby is born and the newborn ends up being a male. When the Creator God has borrowed this intelligent energy from the goddess, a fire that is still in infancy, without any experience in the physical universe, the founders attach an avatar and a mind, emotional body, to the fire in a superior form of compartmentalizing the fire into different sections with different tasks. This avatar is the same as the light body in New Age circles and amongst spiritual researchers. But it's much more than just a light body that we use in the ether when our physical body is dead. A common belief is that the light body avatar is the body we use in the between life area, BLA, to manifest ourselves, choosing how we want to look. For example, a 90-year-old woman dies on Earth and goes to the BLA and meets her relatives. She is somewhat shocked, because many of these relatives died when they were old, but here they look like when they were young, when they were in their best years. They explain to the 90-year-old that this is how they prefer to look like, because that's when they liked themselves best when they were on Earth. They tell the 90-year-old that she can do exactly the same thing just by thinking about looking the way she wants. So, they're in the ether, without the resistance of a body. The 90-year-old does what she was suggested, and voila, she looks like she did as a 25-year-old. So what is happening here? Well, the soul, the mind, and the avatar leave the physical body together. They are never separated. So here, in a less dense environment, the souls can use their avatar and shape themselves as they please, and everybody else will see the change. This is also a clue to what shape-shifting really is. Interestingly enough, in Dr. Michael Newton's books, based on these more than 7,000 witnesses, telling us through regression therapy exactly what happens between lives, people who died said they were picked up by their spirit guides. And although it mostly seemed to be a pleasant experience, some witnesses were horrified because their guide looked like a demon or looked very scary to the deceased. Then, all of a sudden, the guide changed shape into something much more pleasant, laughing and saying he was only joking. Well, not very nice perhaps, but what this guy did was to change shape of his avatar, making him look scary just because he could. This, I should add, seems to be a very rare event. In most cases, the guides look very pleasant. Perhaps the discarnate soul in these cases needed a wake-up call, so the guide manifested himself in this negative way. Who knows? We often hear from star races that humanity is royal, and many researchers are wondering why that is. Later on we are going to discuss the reason for this, and in fact, it's a very important subject and goes like a line through the whole second level of learning.